the start of our next is Open Data, Concrete Methods for Upskilling Public Servants by Alec. Just going to quickly prompt you at the 5-minute mark.
Perfect, yeah. Awesome. Thanks so much. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me all right? Yes, very good. I'm Alec Wenzowski. I'm the CEO of Button. I see a few familiar faces in the audience, though hopefully more of you are online. They didn't give me a monitor, so I can't see you, even if you have your video on. I'm sorry. I am an overall technical human, but as you may notice from the panel up there, I am not a civil servant. I am a consultant, but as a developer, as someone who works with data, the topic of open data and data analysis is near and dear to me. A bit of Button. Button is a consultancy. We help government and industry create reliable data-centric products and services. And everyone attending here today, we're all here because presumably we understand the power that data holds for organizations to fuel data-driven decision-making and automation, among other things. And in a public sector context, to ensure that we are providing products and services to citizens that accurately reflect the needs of users and are efficient and accessible. We've seen a lot of accessibility and equity and fairness in people's content yesterday and today. It's really easy for us to embark on data transformation projects with unbridled optimism, and it's great to see so much of that optimism alive and well. And for those of us who are data practitioners, I think we all know that the reality is far messier. Data links are swampy, legacy business processes can be hard to change, and often in government, in the civil service, you may not want to rip out your legacy processes too quickly. There's huge value in providing consistency over time. And it also takes time to hire and grow teams to adapt to a new and more data-driven strategy. So the reality is that with a few exceptions, incremental improvement and feedback loops within our organizations are often the beginning to much more sustainable paths to building digital literacy and data-driven decision-making. So Button, as a consultancy that works with public sector and private sector to build digital products. When we are delivering our products, we build in tools in our culture in support of our client work in order to enable data upskilling as part of the fabric of each of our engagements. So I'm here today to share a few of those methods with you and look forward to meeting more of you throughout the day. Those of you who are here in person, hearing some of your questions, those of you who are here virtually, and sharing a few lessons we've learned and hopefully finding the ways that these things that we've learned might apply to your own work. So you might think from hearing some of my introductory comments that I'm a little bit pessimistic about the speed of data upskilling and the adoption across teams. It's actually quite the opposite. Button has worked with many aspects of digital transformation in government, from service design to software architecture and development. Some of our projects are new large-scale programs, and other modernize existing products and services within government and within enterprise environments. And we find commonalities. We often find that the largest impact in our environments comes from getting the data into the right places, cleaning it up, and getting it into the right presentation layers that support evidence-based decision-making and continually improving those processes of data flow. But we also find that by improving data literacy and skills across entire teams, and I mean that about everyone who touches data-enabled systems, from subject matter experts to policymakers to executive decision makers, we ensure that teams are able to have data-driven and evidence-based discussions across an entire division or an area of government within a common language or framework. And speaking of common language, in an era of face-to-face interactions, the rough edges of our business processes and edge cases were handled individually by people, and often completely inconsistently. But as we continue to embrace the digital age, expectations have changed to include feedback mechanisms and digital components where we're able to receive feedback even when we're not face to face, as many of us are not today. So that is to say, in the expectations of our digital age, broken processes are no longer accepted, and that age of accepting broken processes has ended. So now, as we end up removing many of our face-to-face interactions and increase the efficiency of service, the primary voice of citizens that we have available to us in delivering service is the data that citizens provide. So defining data literacy, this is a term that I expect most of our attendees today are familiar with. And like most jargon in a fast-moving environment, I expect that if you turn to your left or your right, or virtually if you use the Google, you're going to come up with a different answer depending on the source. So why is upskilling even necessary at all? Whoops, there we are. Things are all over the place here. We might start by retitling this slide, Being a Data Literate Organization. So in these definitions, two of my favorites. Data literacy is the ability to read, work with, analyze, and use data ethically to solve challenges, to drive innovation and create value collaboratively. It's also describing an individual's ability to read, write, and communicate with data in context. So we want to make sure that that context is appropriately matched for decision making. So if we're thinking about being a data literate organization in the context of these definitions of data literacy, I'm going to ask you all to consider what being ethical means to us, what innovation means to us, and what collaboration means to us. These are all words that we throw around regularly, but again, words that in a technical environment require specific definitions. So I'll ask you to consider that to us, being ethical means more than just the processes surrounding data ethics, around data privacy and security. For those of you here in Victoria who work with the province, that might mean your PIA and straw processes. But rather that ethics means having enough data literacy to understand what is required by your oath if you're a civil servant, the policy and guidance that your decision making is clear, transparent, and reflects citizen needs. So data literacy and ethics becomes baked into the process of your work in support of policy and the way we build and operationalize government services. So there's also this tendency in teams to focus on solving huge gaps in data understanding by focusing on tooling. There have been some incredible projects presented, some data portals, some visualizations, some analyses, and I want to celebrate all of that. I want to congratulate all the amazing work that people are doing on that front, and really want to note how important those contributions are to the data-driven mindset that we're talking about. But tools and access themselves are not enough. We have this huge gap that's not about tools. We need to embed this sense of data literacy at a broad scale, at a wide scale. I think everyone would agree, we can't embed a data scientist on every team everywhere in all of government. And I suspect that we have a demographic skew here today, that many of you come from high-performing data divisions that know your information inside and out. But there may be ministries beyond your team or people in treasury board or people in other divisions who aren't quite as familiar with your data, where data literacy is the key piece holding your team back in being able to communicate across teams or out to the public. So I believe we need to scale our skill set, but we have some mindsets that are holding us back. A few of these mindsets are fairly well known across the public and private sector. The mindset that credentials trump skills and skills trump potential. So this plays out with rigid candidate requirements, eliminating high potential talent from candidate pools and stifling access to talent. We have the mindset that employees must complete traditional education in order to obtain necessary skills. So this is traditional education practices being the primary format for existing upskilling and reskilling initiatives, but preventing government and industry from building skills and capabilities rapidly and effectively through alternate pathways. We also have talent management structures, many of us, which limit access to talent and are highly resistant to change. So job classification and competition rules in particular that make it difficult to enable existing talent within our organizations, meaning that people who already have the right skills may not be able to actually use and apply those skills that they have. So at Button, we see a lot of these frictions in our work. But I know we're not alone. I know many of us face these frictions. And as luck would have it, many of the frictions out there, including these three, can be addressed with one single method, the feedback loop. So let's talk specifically about Button and some of our public sector work. And the key pieces that we build in order to enable upskilling for data literacy on our teams and in partnership with our clients. Feedback loops are the key underpinning to how we often look at creating an environment for open data upskilling. They create the psychological safety for individuals and teams to ask questions, prod into data, and identify gaps in knowledge sets. They allow us to do incremental development of concepts and to do regular check-ins and retrospectives. They allow us to figure out what is working and what is not. And they allow us to critically question what can be measured and what should be measured. And in a public sector context, we find this is super important, especially where it's key to have an entire team, all their smart, inquisitive minds questioning things like data bias, like the collection methods, like the timeliness, and how the data is actually being used. These are all the underpinnings of strong data-driven decision-making, and they can come from across your team, not just the technical folks, not just the data scientists on your team and those supporting you. Data-driven decision-making is in itself an example of a feedback loop where data demand necessitates data collection and analysis, which produces information availability, which results in information use, and that whole positive feedback loop continues. So for this presentation, I've grouped feedback loops into three categories. They tie together to help us build and grow data literate teams that understand how we'll know successful citizen-centered outcomes when we see them. They enable us to continuously upskill talent and build flexibility in a traditionally credential-driven environment. And we can take the time to ensure individual career growth goals are aligned with team goals and organizational goals. There's not always 100% crossover there, but it's really important for us to be aware of as we build our feedback loops. And feedback loops at Button are really driven by measurement-based experimentation. We often see cultures of innovation being thrown around as this nebulous thing that we're going to get because it's what we're all striving for. And it's a fantastic North Star, a guiding goal. In thinking big, it's a great vision. At Button, we track and measure many pieces of information in the context of how do we get to our big visions. In building applications, we follow, say, DevOps best practices, and we track our golden signals to make sure that the systems that we're building are stable and resilient. But the most important thing that we do on every engagement is we systematically go and talk to users. We talk to people. And systematically is the key word there. Anecdotal evidence doesn't get us very far. And in some cases, it may be a breach of policy, a breach of ethics. So systematically. So let me give an example. We had a client who was a real subject matter expert in their area, an economist, and a project that relied on a lot of economic data. This client really just wanted to see all the data that they had. The data was messy. It went back a decade. It had to be massaged and curated. We had to build an automated process to pull it in. It was a really technical project. But it turned out that real design and data work that was needed was all about building a culture of innovation, a culture of experimentation, a culture of exploration on the team, on the hybrid team, us together with the client, to upskill the data literacy and create evidence-based program decisions around all of the roles. Everyone's supported by the data that was presented when we got to that point of getting all the data in a business intelligence tool. And when we think about many of our engagements, the biggest piece of how we do this, how we build this culture of innovation, is in a systemic way. I mentioned thinking big. We have to think really, really big, but we act small. And we're constantly asking, what is the smallest thing that will get us closer to our great big goal? How quickly can we do that small thing? And how reliably can we measure that we've done that small thing? And how can we rinse and repeat and repeat and repeat so that inexorably we drive forward towards that grand vision, one tiny low risk step at a time? If we go ask users, whether they're public or private sector, for anecdotal open-ended feedback without systematizing our approach, we don't get meaningful results. And we're not talking about huge disruption when we're talking about building a culture of innovation. We're talking about data-centric approaches to identifying program goals, constraints, and this smallest thing that moves us forward. And cultures of innovation at Button are all about moving very, very quickly in very, very small steps. So if you're reading my slides and not just listening to me, you'll see the concrete methods that help us create this culture of innovation are building cross-functional teams, hiring for lifelong learners, prioritizing mentorship and curiosity, creating incremental learning opportunities and opportunities to explore, and understanding that retention rate correlates to satisfaction. That is, retention rate and employee satisfaction is really important in ensuring that when you upskill, that as an organization, you're benefiting from having done so. So remember the mindsets that were holding us back. Credentials over skills, reliance on traditional education, rigid talent management structures. An example hitting home in the private and public sector right now that I see is a new role that is evolving as organizations try to figure out how generative AI fits. It's a brand new role that some of you may even have in your organizations, but that certainly didn't exist before. And I'm talking about prompt engineering. So if you're lucky enough to have someone with that title right now, they're probably the new person. And they definitely don't have an MSc in prompt engineering because that's not a thing that exists, right? So in talent mobility, we're talking about the things that we're hiring for right now that are the future of work, the things that we need to select for skills and we need to select for potential for. So at Button, when we're talking about selecting for potential, we have a method, we have a system. The thing that we select for most is lifelong learning. So by setting rigid candidate requirements, the things that we see across industry and the public sector, we would end up eliminating high potential talent right from the start of our own talent pool. So at Button, we look to find opportunities for people to grow into, and we look for staff to have opportunities to align with their own growth with the needs of our clients, with the needs of our organization and our client organizations. So the method that we use to conduct that alignment is a career growth framework. This is a fairly common tool in the Silicon Valley development culture. Apple, Netflix, Google, Facebook, they all have these, and very common in the ecosystem of other tech companies. And our career growth frameworks at Button are what are driving forward our work integrated learning plans. So work integrated learning. For data upskilling, you need three things. You need access to data, you need data tooling, and you need data education. So you need to support your team in finding opportunities for upskilling, from hypotheses through trying and experimentation, through conclusions, that whole feedback loop. And as you are doing so, you need to prioritize retention as part of your upskilling plan, as part of your team culture. And one of the ways that may sound obvious, but is in fact really hard to do in a large enterprise and an organizational context, is to begin with trust. Trust your people and train your people to seek out opportunities to learn. Your people are your asset, and remember that one of the most common mindsets to disrupt was around the need to complete traditional education to gain skills. We're all here today at a conference to learn together, and there are presumably other events and training days and other things each of us do throughout the year. But the most important thing that each of us get to do as part of our jobs, those of us who are fortunate enough to work in technology fields, to work in data fields, these fields that are ever changing, is we get to apply new skills. We get to apply methodologies and tools and practices in our daily lives as part of our professional responsibilities. So the most important thing that we can do for work integrated learning is empower entire teams to identify these gaps and weaknesses within their team, to allow each of the individual people who make up that team to identify the opportunities to gain the skills that the team has identified are missing or weaker than necessary, and collaborate with others across the organization beyond just that team to drive forward the upskilling for mentorship. So I don't want anyone to get the wrong idea. Button, our clients, nobody is expecting people to do jobs that they're not qualified for. But so much of what we all do in our work requires consistency, and it requires continuity. If we were to go out tomorrow and engage in a traditional education pathway, whether it's a degree granting program or something much shorter, a course for a day or two, the beginning of the work integrated learning journey would be conscious. We would have devoted intentional effort to the endeavor. And having completed that training, we might even have achieved competency, meeting the criteria necessary to be effective with that new knowledge. But without work integrated learning, we won't have achieved any of the other necessary components. And this 5Cs definition, this is something that at Button we proudly found elsewhere. This comes from Medium, fantastic company, great culture, definitely worth implementing. And in this context, as we're trying to achieve all 5 of the criteria at each level of each skill, we want to be thinking about our time to skill productivity, the time between identifying that first conscious intent to upskill and how we are then going to get the uh, demonstrated experience level with the comfortable, the continuous, and the consistent criteria. At Button, work integrated learning means taking stories from backlogs in a software development environment and applying skills that we're just looking to get better at. But it is a collaborative endeavor that involves agreeing with the rest of our teams that this is something of the right skill level, that we've each individually dialed the difficulty knob up to the point where it's hard, it's challenging, and we're continuously growing, but dialed it down to the point where it becomes insurmountable. And so this is one of our feedback loops in action. I saw the 5-minute flag go up. So I'm just going to head to our summary. And if there is one thing that I would say you should take away from this presentation, it's that the pathway to data literacy is the creation of feedback loops. Does anyone have questions?
The feedback loops and it being like well-defined. Can you kind of explain what that looks like a little bit more?
Absolutely. So the question is generally about feedback loops and how to make sure that they're well defined. The answer is actually very closely related to the 5C criteria of work integrated learning, making sure that we're beginning from the conscious perspective of identifying the outcomes that we're seeking to achieve and ensuring that we have a pathway to measure those outcomes. I also mentioned this in the context of going out and talking to users, talking to citizens. And at Button, when we seek to do so, we make a research plan. And even though we're private sector and we work with enterprise and government, those research plans look a lot like the research plans many of you might have done in graduate school. And they exist because the process of consciously thinking about what the positive and negative effects, what side effects, what foreseen and unforeseen consequences might be, and how we'll adapt if some of those unforeseen consequences start appearing is really crucial to our plan. Do you have any more on your question?
Any other questions? I don't see any questions on the Slack channel too.
Awesome. Well, without other questions, I have an ask for everyone here today, and that is please continue to champion the importance of data literacy within your organizations. If you want any help creating feedback loops to allow continuous iterative learning, come talk to me. I'll be over there. I hope to get the opportunity to connect with more of you throughout the remainder of the conference. Thank you very much.
Visual exploration of neighborhood and population level data by the City of Vancouver.
Thank you, Chanel. Can you guys hear me okay? No? Did I hear no? Is that okay? Better now? Okay, thank you. Okay. Hi, my name is Linda Lowe, and I'm the coordinator for the City of Vancouver's Open Data Program. I'm part of the Enterprise Data Analytic Division within the Technology Services Department. Before I begin my presentation, I would like to echo the conference organizer for the acknowledgement that the City of Victoria is located on the homelands of the Songhees First Nations and Esquimalt First Nations communities. I would also like to acknowledge the land which I live, work, and play is City of Vancouver, which is situated on the unceded traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. The term unceded means that the land was never legally ceded or given up to the Crown through a treaty or other agreement. This term serves as a reminder that Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh have never left the territories and will always retain the jurisdiction and relationship with the territory. Here's the agenda of my presentation. Sharing the journey of the City of Vancouver's Healthy City Dashboard to illustrate how using open data can help to understand inequity in social determinants of health with visual exploration of neighborhood and population level data. Let's get started with a quick background of the city's open data program and how it relates to this award-winning Healthy City Dashboard. The Vancouver's open data program officially started in 2009, when City Council passed a motion to promote the idea that government-collected data should be made freely available for public use and analysis while respecting privacy and security concerns. Building from the council motion, the program followed these main principles so no one needs to register or pay a fee in order to access the published data. Data is accessible 24/7 and can be processed by computers. Published datasets have no privacy, legal, or security concerns, and they are published under the terms of Open Government License Vancouver to encourage reuse and to redistribute data. The datasets are capped as current as it needs to be and based on resource availability. The Open Data Catalog was launched a few months after the council motion was passed, with a couple dozens of basic datasets available for download. Some of you might still remember seeing this catalog list, which was made up of static HTML web pages. A project took place in 2019 to eliminate many manual processes and to migrate all datasets from the legacy catalog to the open data portal you see today on opendata.vancouver.ca. The new portal makes it easier for users to access, search, visualize, build maps and charts without having to leave the browser. Furthermore, users can query the data programmatically through application programming interface APIs or export the data to use with their own tool. And now I understand in the room, the lighting is not that great with the slides. And so you might want to actually connect to the internet and go to opendata.vancouver.ca because I'm going to go through the Healthy City Dashboard. For the people online, they'll be fine with the screenshot. So I'm not sure in the room if you can see the slides properly. And you can go through it. There's a second tab. I think I can use a highlighter here. Oh, no, it's not working. Okay, but there's a tab on the top that says catalog and dashboard and so forth. And just click on the dashboard. You can follow along. We can go through a journey together for the Healthy City Dashboard. Here's how the dataset catalog looks like. You can find a variety of datasets such as types of trees on public streets, orthophoto imageries, records of building permits, and business licenses that are issued by the city. Now you had a quick background of the Open Data Program. Let's take you on to the journey of the Healthy City Dashboard and see how the two are related. The journey started when Vancouver City Council approved the Healthy City Strategy, HCS, as the city's social sustainability plan in 2014. So what is a healthy city? What do we need in order to be healthy and well? Healthy city is not just about physical health of the citizens and providing them access to healthcare, although they are part of it. It is about healthy people, healthy environment, and healthy communities, which are the three focus areas of the HCS. This slide provides a good summary of the Healthy City Strategy. It has a long-term vision to help identify health inequities across different population groups and neighborhoods and making adjustments to imbalances. There are 13 goals, the three focus areas that I talked about earlier, and how HCS will integrate with other related strategies to ensure efforts are aligned. A lot of work and efforts already went underway in the Social Policy Department. This department has a vision to use data to work towards a healthy, equitable, social sustainability city for all, and they're building this vision on a strong foundation of research and data. They work with various partners in the community to build relationship and capacity to continue to understand how changes and trends take place in the different areas of the city and how it is experienced by the different individuals and groups. Initially, they were using Excel spreadsheets to do the data tracking. A few years later, they migrated to use a Microsoft Access database, a system of records with various manual workflows to supplement the data collection and maintenance efforts. Progress were communicated via various channels such as static reports and through the city's website. As one can expect, the sustainment efforts became challenging to manage all the workflows to track and monitor progress of all 13 goals with associated targets and indicators that you see in this summary table. In 2019, the City of Vancouver, working closely with Vancouver Coastal Health, joined the Partnership for Healthy Cities, PHC. PHC is a global network of 70 cities committed to saving lives by preventing non-communicable diseases and injuries. This network of cities are supported by Bloomberg Philanthropies in partnership with the World Health Organization and Vital Strategies. And with the partnership funding, there is opportunity to enhance the city's data and monitoring systems and make population health data more accessible and relevant to community partners. It was a collaborative effort put forth by social policy, technology services, digital services, finance, and communications departments. And with all the hard work, the Healthy City Dashboard was launched publicly in April of 2021. So this dashboard tracks progress against 23 key indicators in 12 goals that act as determinants of health and well-being of residents and communities as a whole. Here you're looking at lifelong learning goal and the two associated indicators. Each indicator card includes current status of progress toward the target, most recent data available, target figure, and desired trend. When you click on a particular indicator card, it'll take you to the corresponding indicator details page. You see the same summary content across the top. You'll also see the data points for this indicator in the chart. You can expand the data table below the chart to see the supporting data points for all available reporting periods. If you like, you can also explore this. You can also click on the Explore this dataset button, which takes you to the indicator data sets, which I'll talk more later. If you scroll down the page some more, you can find additional information, such as why it is important to have this indicator, how it was measured, and commentary about the current state. All these were built on top of the template used for the Van dashboard. The first public-facing dashboard launched in the city's open data portal to demonstrate transparency and accountability on key city services, along with progress on overall goals and strategies. Dashboard pages are made up of HTML, JavaScript, Angular widgets provided by the Open Data Portal vendor, OpenDataSoft. Dashboard was designed with data governance, user experience, and sustainable efforts in mind. So they're repeatable processes to onboard new indicators and dashboard more quickly and with consistent look and feel. Contents that are used to power the dashboard and indicator pages are published as data sets for public consumption and to support transparency. Only approved data will be published. We're using one template to display contents for all different indicators and one list of indicators for all dashboards. Here's an overview of the data flow. Using SSIS packages, data are copied from a department SharePoint collection site containing the metric repository and data collection list to another SharePoint site called Dashboard Configurator. Here's what the configurator looks like. The SharePoint site holds dashboard-specific configuration details, such as which categories to include, which commentaries to include with which indicators, and which color backgrounds to use. All data are maintained by the data steward at the Social Policy Department. The data from the configurator are then copied to a SQL server and we combine into datasets, which are published to the staging environment of the Open Data Portal. When there is approval to publish to production environment, a manual process is triggered to use SSIS packages to generate CSV data files, which the Open Data Portal will pull to update related datasets and dashboard. Here are the 4 datasets that drive the contents of the dashboard. I'll give you a quick overview of each one. They're also publicly accessible on the Open Data Portal if you want to take a closer look. The first one is the indicator data dataset. It has the time series data and targets that are used to display in the indicator charts and tables that you saw earlier. The indicator details datasets includes data that you see on the indicator detail page, such as status and targets value with the exceptions of time series data. The dashboard cards dataset includes all the data required to display on the card, plus which dashboard the card belongs to and its listing order. You can probably guess what this one is going to be about. This dashboard pages and categories dataset includes data to build dashboard pages, such as which categories to include, what color to go with which category, and its sorting order. It is one record per category with dashboard information repeated on each row. As the project team sees there is great potential to make this dashboard an engagement tool, a resource to access data specific to different areas and population groups, there's motivation to continue the momentum. With the added help from our Open Data Portal vendor, the support and guidance of a community advisory committee and working group, which the social policy team was heavily engaged with, the enhanced version of the dashboard was launched in 2022. New features include user guide, which explains the different way to use this dashboard and guidance on equitable data practices, which I included some in my presentation. Other important enhancement includes adding disaggregated data for different geographical areas and population groups in many of the indicators. These data are available when you see these icons on an indicator card. Exploring data by areas. This one is important. So for indicators that have areas data, you see a green areas tab on the indicator details page, like the one you see on the screen. You can select up to 2 geographical areas. In this example, is the city's local planning areas to compare with the overall value for the city. By having data from different areas of the city available, it helps to identify areas where more relevant services or resources might be helpful to drive equitable outcomes and to meet the outlined goal. It is important to note that the area level data is an average of many different people's experiences. This geographical area average should not be used to measure or predict an individual's experience on health and well-being. Explore data by populations. For indicators that have the population data, you'll see a green populations tab like the one you see on the screen. Different indicator has different filtering categories available, such as age, racial identity, and immigration status. It is important to know the dashboard currently do not have the data for all population categories. Having this disaggregated data is helpful to understand how different population groups in the city experience inequity in health. It is important not to use this data to target individuals, but to use it to identify the systems that create differences between population and work to change them. Some examples could be to integrate data into research reports, help fill data gaps, create programs to meet the needs of specific group to drive more equitable outcomes. The user guide made reference to this report that was published in 2020 by the BC's Office of the Human Rights Commissioner on how we can use disaggregated data towards equity. Some indicator pages have tags data to show key partners, related indicators or strategies, and if the indicator aligns with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. This example aligns with the no poverty goal. And earlier this year, City of Vancouver won the Partnership for Healthy Cities Award for its efforts to address the root cause of health inequities experienced by people in Vancouver. Winning the award doesn't mean the work stops here, but rather it reconfirms that there is value in this effort. The enhanced dashboard represents the ongoing efforts to refine and improve existing work to better support reporting and monitoring for the HCS and other related strategies. The bulk of the work and effort is still with the business department. The social policy is working on including additional indicators to strengthen the city's relationship with local nations and urban indigenous organizations, to have data that reflects experiences of communities in the city. As a city of reconciliation, and Vancouver being the first city in Canada to adopt a strategy for implementing the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People, the city is committed to form respectful relationship with Indigenous community to align efforts. The Healthy City Strategy is also due for renewal next year. In closing, the intent of the Healthy City Dashboard is to make it a tool for conversations, a resource to access data to specific areas and population groups to help identify and understand health inequity and to support advocacy for change to systems that create inequities between communities. The collaboration and expertise brought forward from multiple departments, community advisory committee, and working groups were demonstrated through this dashboard. There were great recommendations on user experience design, technical guidance on data architecture and system integration to integrate the dashboard into the city's open data, finance, and performance measurement systems. This all would not be possible without the guidance from external partners, the business in-depth knowledge about HCS and its monitoring and reporting framework. The effort is scalable to onboard new strategy goals and new dashboards. Several cities have already reached out to learn more about cities' published dashboards. And integrating Healthy City Dashboard into the city's open data program helps demonstrate some of the value of open data. Having the dashboard and indicator publicly accessible is another step towards transparency. To support public reporting and cities' accountability to continue to take action to achieve the 13 goals outlined in HCS. The business department is also transparent about the data is incomplete and welcome the community's assistance to help enrich and fill data gaps. Proactive disclosure of disaggregated data for neighborhood and population groups helps to identify areas where more relevant services or resources might be helpful to drive equitable outcomes and is helpful for researchers. The data can also empower citizens to understand how they can make an impact on the community's well-being. It can drive further conversations and actions toward health equity in the city, which is the long-term vision of the Healthy City strategy. And this concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions? For sure.
Thank you. This is a really interesting project. You talked a lot about the possibilities of how this could help either community groups or internally being able to use this dashboard to make a real difference where you're seeing that disparity in service or that inequity. Do you have any examples of where that's happened?
Sorry, examples of?
Examples of where this dashboard has actually been used to make real meaningful change so far in a policy, whether that's community-driven using the dashboard, coming to the municipality asking for change, or internally somebody in a department using it to actually update a policy or update a service because they're seeing there's a difference.
The social policy department has those examples. Sorry, I don't have those, but I do know that there's other strategies that have indicated that Healthy City Dashboard will be the one to use to help report their progresses on their strategy as well. So I can connect with you after. Sorry, I don't have that info.
Any other questions?
Thanks. I'm just wondering if you know how this compares to open data initiatives in other provinces, and if BC is leading the way in terms of this kind of dashboard, or if there are other provinces that are also doing this kind of work.
In terms of dashboard, I think a lot of different BC cities are doing their own dashboard, but in terms of integrating the open data with the strategy and then also providing the narratives and then also the disaggregated data that that's unique that I've seen, that we really wanted to have this as an engagement tool and then empowering the citizen to understand, better understand the data where they can identify the inequities, and then using that as an advocacy for change. I think that's a very key part that sets the dashboards different. And then also making the distinction that this is like not about deficit, like this is more pointing out there's inequities and then how we can make the changes. Like again, it's the difference between equity and then equality, right?
Thanks.
Any other questions? Anything from the chat? All right, then I think it should be good.
Thank you.